Anti-Afro, Svengalis, we got a couple of things to cover. First up, thanking you again, Reb G, for a great panel you had with Anisa, Abdullah Umar Johnson's daughter, along with Messi Michon, Nyla, and Taz. Good things come to those who wait. And it's just simply reinforcing how we will always win as winners. It doesn't matter what the losers say. The losers will never top the winners. If you have any doubt about it, show us. Show us how a loser can overtake a winner. Land a deal, seal a deal, top us out. Have they ever done it? No. All they can do is run their mouth. Nothing productive. Nothing productive. And the judge of what's productive and useful and beneficial are those who participated in the process. And that would include Anisa. So who are these subjects around here thinking they can speak for Anisa? You can't speak for her. We can't speak for her. She can speak for herself. And she did a pretty damn good job. So everyone can have their opinion, but when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, this young lady was satisfied with the before, with the during, and the after. And you can say whatever you want. That is not going to change. Now, what I want to talk about, we're going to talk about ethics. There are times when things are said and you just, okay, whatever. People say what they say. There are other times when I got to say, wait just a minute. I got to make sure the situation is clarified because it has to do with the profession that I hold near and dear. Now, this relates to these claims that were floating around. You saw some comments typed in different chats that were sent to me about Reb G and ethics involving the panel interview with Anisa. And I thought I would go over these comments because this is a teaching moment. This is an opportunity to demonstrate to those who are interested in actual facts. Because you can string together words that may, at first sight, look impressive. And when someone speaks the words, they may sound impressive, but in actuality, they're incorrect. They're not based on facts. And it's incongruent with reality. And in fact, it doesn't even exist as far as what is before us. It doesn't apply to the situation at hand. And we have such a situation when it comes to these phrases that came across my email. And I want to go over these with you. And then I'm going to show you another example. Oh, my good Lord. Look at this here on the screen. We're going to get to this too. But I'm going to cover something first, some comments that were left in some chats regarding ethics and social work and mental health and social services. We're using that umbrella title. So this one comment started out with what people with credentials should be doing. Okay, if you want to be clear when you're leveling a criticism, it's wise to be specific about what credentials you're referring to. Because although it's an umbrella field, you're referring to a credential. What exactly do you mean? You're going to have to narrow it down to be specific. And what conduct or what behavior is being addressed? What credential and what behavior? Gerald talked about how he used to provide services with fatherhood programs. And this was the foundation by which he came up with the idea. But keep in mind, Anisa is a woman. So if you look at comparison to comparison, you can't say fatherhood program because Anisa is a woman. So Gerald would not be using his credentials as a fatherhood group facilitator or program coordinator with Anisa, so that would not apply. Gerald has other credentials. So which credentials are we referring to? Are you referring to Taz? He has RBT credentials. We suspect that this was a swipe at Gerald, but at any rate, I'm just throwing out credentials. What credentials are we referring to? So that was a comment that was thrown out. It wasn't clarified what credentials and what specific act are we describing when we're talking about credentials, because there are many credentials. And then we have engage in public therapeutic actions like. So, public therapeutic, I actually haven't even heard of the term in this manner before. I've been around for a little bit of time, but I will take a stab in the dark. Public therapeutic. I'm assuming this means you're doing something in the open and it's therapeutic that everybody can see, but that's kind of tricky because it has a lot of tentacles to it. Let me explain. When you're talking about therapeutic, you have a carrier and you have a recipient. So let's stay on Gerald Palmer. So Gerald Palmer is carrying something and he has a recipient. Let's say it's Anisa. We have to describe what is he carrying. You have to be able to identify what that is. Whatever he's carrying to the recipient makes a decision about how they receive it, how they respond to it. But is it actually therapeutic? That is going to be up to the receiver. But you have to know the intention of the carrier to begin with. You could be walking in the park, pondering your thoughts, trying to figure out a problem, and you can encounter somebody, a stranger, and have a brief conversation, and that person can give you an answer to your issue, and that's therapeutic. So therapeutic is not limited to someone who has a credential or is speaking to you, and just because they have a credential, this is automatically putting them on the hook for something they could be liable for. Just because someone has a license in a field, they can't have a conversation with you without putting themselves on the hook when it comes to their profession. You need to know, was there a conversation before? Were there some parameters set before? If you don't have the answers to the questions, the comment is one that is made with a very high degree of ignorance. People make all kinds of statements without having information. Now let's go to the dark side for a second. Let's say you got to run to the corner. And we know this happens when there are some subjects who are live. They run to the corner and buy crack while they're running a 7-hour live stream, a 6-hour live stream. They buy that crack. They go get that street level fentanyl. They consume it in whatever manner they consume it. Are you going to tell them that consumption is not therapeutic? You're going to tell them that the outcome and how they feel ingesting that street level fentanyl and that crack isn't therapeutic for them? Try and tell them it's not therapeutic. What was the intention of the carrier? It certainly was not therapeutic, but the recipient certainly is seeing that as therapeutic. So, what is the context? If you don't have all the information, you're making a statement with an incredible amount of ignorance, and you're making yourself look like a fool. Public therapeutic. The term does not apply. Now, if you're so sure it applies, you should be able to point out exactly what the therapeutic intervention was. Simply having a conversation with someone and you have a credential doesn't make it a formal therapeutic intervention. It's a conversation. You can have a conversation with someone and be licensed and be certified. And it's not a public therapeutic intervention. How they receive it is how they receive it. If they receive it and they benefit from it, great. Anisa did benefit, and that's a positive thing. No matter how anybody tries to contort it and make it negative, there is so much envy and so much jealousy that no matter what has been done, no matter what has been said, we come out as winners because that's what we are. You're not going to tell us how we're going to operate and how we're going to function. If there was something wrong in what we were doing, you would be able to dismantle it. You have failed. You have failed because there was nothing wrong with what we're doing. There was nothing wrong with what Gerald was doing. Just because he didn't come to you and consult with you doesn't mean what he did was wrong. We don't have to explain anything. Let me tell you something. I had an issue. Let me sidetrack for a second. Because Taz reviewed Cynthia G's interview with Anisa. And the fact that she interviewed her, I'm glad. She compensated her, I'm glad. But one thing that bothered me about that interview, Cynthia G perpetrated as if she didn't know information about Umar. I'm like, what? What? Cynthia, what? I didn't know that. Are you serious? Are you serious? That to me is not cool. You do not act as if you don't know something when you do, because you're trying to present yourself in a way that you want to feel more likable or desirable to the subject. Be honest. Everybody on that panel with Rev G was honest. And nobody can knock Nyla, Taz, Messi Mashan, or Rev G. Honesty is the best policy. So going back to the comments that were left, this feedback regarding why no one told her that she most likely needs a therapist and a good, highly credentialed therapist, dot, dot, dot. First off, it would be rude to suggest to someone that they need a therapist, especially in a public forum. That would not be done. Number two, when the term highly credentialed is thrown about, that could give off an impression that the person is in need of some propulsion jet strength services because their issues are so bad. Oh my goodness. I mean, forget the person couldn't possibly have had any sort of inner strength or any other support system, nothing else. So they would be dependent on this process. That would have to be a highly credentialed psychotherapist. What's important is, does a person have the training and experience and knowledge to provide services specific to the person sitting before them? It doesn't matter how many credentials a professional has if they don't have the knowledge and skill in the areas of the person who is seeking services. But none of that matters because that wasn't the gig. That would have been overstepping boundaries quite far. Now, if a person chooses to bring something up on their own, that's what they do. But you wouldn't mention and bring this up in a public forum. You just wouldn't do it. So again, a lot of times these words are written, they appear in chats, but a lot of times the information is inaccurate. And you also have situations where comments will be made in order to stretch scenarios to make it appear others are engaging in certain types of behaviors that they're not. Because the truth doesn't help those who are targeting you. The purpose of the panel wasn't to dig around in Anisa's personal, intimate life as far as this topic. Now, if she wants to volunteer, that's on her. But nobody was digging around like that. Nobody dug around to that extent. And Anisa is very capable of asserting boundaries. If she doesn't want to talk about something, she doesn't want to talk about something. Someone actually did ask her about Umar Johnson's father, her grandfather, and she said, yes, I spoke to him, but he doesn't want me to talk about him, so I'm not going to talk about him. Nobody else jumped up and said, well, tell us this and tell us that. Unlike what you see on these other panels, they keep haranguing you, they follow you around, they keep bringing up a topic after you set boundaries. You see that happening. No respect. Total and complete disrespect, which you didn't have on the panel. We have a lot of jealousy and a lot of envy. So down here we have counselor, patient privilege. It wasn't that kind of party. Nobody was digging around in her background like that, at least publicly. And if anything like that happened offline, it wouldn't be for public consumption. Wouldn't come online and discuss anything like that if it did happen behind the scenes. But we did have somebody who did cross that boundary. I see this video is getting a little bit long, so I'm going to have to do part 2. But I wanted to come up here to clarify issues when people write terminology and phrases in chats and they make it seem like it's so important and relevant. All you need to do, if you think it's a concern, you think it's relevant, you think you're on point, put it to the test and file a complaint. If you think it's that serious, something went down that should have not have gone down, go ahead and address it. Address it and identify what you're talking about versus trying to besmirch somebody's reputation because you got some bones to pick. Pick the bones. Stand by what you believe in. We certainly do. We sign our name to every single complaint. If we're serious about something, we stand by it. We just don't come up onto YouTube and because we're mad at somebody or can't get our way, just start spouting out and we have no intention of following through on what we said we're going to do. Let me say this about the concept or the actuality of targeting and dissing and sneak dissing and harassing and just setting sights on and stalking, all these other things that go on. Adding the prefix unprovoked, that is very important. This is what I'm referring to. These subjects actually think that those who are targeted with the prefix unprovoked are sitting around scratching their head, wondering, how did this all get started in terms of who started it? Bullshit. We know who started the shit. It didn't come from us. These are unprovoked, targeted attacks. And again, everyone has a right to say and feel and do what they want. But when it comes down to it, when it comes time to start defending ourselves, there you have the complaining and the whining and the lying and the swearing up and down. They're harassing me. They won't leave me alone. You quit tagging me. They try to pull a let me see your handcuffs like they're totally innocent. They wipe their page and want their employer to think that you've made all these videos. I'm not taking down shit. I'm not taking down shit. And it didn't work with let me see your handcuffs. It's not going to work with Carrie Ann or anyone else who has initiated attacks on us. And we take action against you. We don't care how many videos we have up and you deleted your content. We know exactly where this shit came from and who started it. In terms of if it's individuality, there's no confusion. There's no head scratching. We do not initiate conflicts with anybody. We know who starts the shit. And we have every right to decide if, when, how, and where we will address it. Listen, I certainly have more coming your way. But in the meantime, you know the drill. Buyer beware.